Welcome to CyberMAYnia, cyber talks with the brightest minds in cybersecurity. Discussing risks, AI, emerging threats, workforce challenges, and more. Brought to you by Cyber Range Solutions. With your host, May Brooks.
Hello and welcome to another episode of CyberMAYnia. And with me today we have the lovely Dr. Jane Blanken-Webb. How are you, Jane?
I'm doing great, thank you. So good to be here with you.
So good to have you. So we always start these episodes in the same way, with you telling us a little bit about yourself, about your background, and in your case, it's a very unique background. So tell us a little bit about your background and how it relates to cybersecurity.
I'm a musician, I'm an educator, I'm a philosopher who accidentally landed in the world of cybersecurity, I'd say. I needed a job and landed a job working with cybersecurity students, and I was told to do education stuff with them, and they opened up this whole world to me that I hadn't considered before. And honestly, I haven't been able to look back ever since.
Amazing. Amazing. So you come with a PhD in education. You're not a techie. You teach,
No.
you didn't say that, but you're an assistant professor at Wilkes University in the US.
Mm-hmm.
And as someone who comes from a non-technical background, what actually drew you to explore cybersecurity, to learn more about the field?
So it was when I was working with cybersecurity education students. This was at the University of Illinois, and I was a postdoc working there. I remember the hairs standing up on my arm when I was learning about, research. This particular research was when they had put a bunch of USB drives out around a college campus, and something like 60% of them got plugged in. And well, what happened with what are these USB keys do? And I'm like trying to get and I'm asking the speakers, what IoT, what is that, and how is that a threat? And it was just eye opening. And for me to sit there from this background in education and to realize there was this entire other layer happening in the reality I was already inhabiting, going on all the time, that most people in the world are just not thinking about, are just not aware of. And being in education, education is the gateway to the future of society, right? And for education to not be taking this issue seriously, it just really struck me as being something really important. So that was the moment of the hair standing up on the back of my arm there. And from there, the students that I was working with, they were so sweet. I had a PhD in philosophy of education, and they took it totally seriously, that was it wasn't an accident that I had landed in cybersecurity education. Of course, there was a master reason behind this. And so we were sort of exploring those master reasons together, and it became quite clear that ethics was an area, and ethics education was an area that needed a lot of unpacking. And where, arguably this is an important area for everybody in society, that the decisions that these students would make in their future careers as cybersecurity professionals will shape the future of society. Their judgments, and it is, and now we're seeing with AI and the development of these technology, it is the judgments and the ethical decisions of a handful, of an elite few, that is shaping the world right now. And so we need to pay particular attention to ethics and ethics education there.
Absolutely.
So,
and it's so exciting to hear about someone really coming from a totally different background. And I can tell you that I've tried to work with education and educators in the past, and some of them were very receptive and incorporated it into their school curriculums. Others sort of, I think it could be because it was considered a technical field, but they sort of pushed back. No, that's not us. We're doing education. This is technology. That's not us. And as you said, it's the future.
Yeah.
It is the future. So can you share a little bit about the program that you're now leading in Wilkes?
I will, but there's a lot about the resistance that I think you're bumping up against. Education ideally should be, as I'm saying, the gateway to the future, the gateway to the kind of society that we should be creating. And yet it's so steeped in these traditional views about how education unfolds, what it is. And that's a really hard tension to break.
Yeah.
So I understand that tension. I work with at Wilkes University. I work with EGD students. So these are students who are getting a doctorate in educational leadership, and I just invite them into. I developed this course called Cybersecurity for Educational Leaders that is intentionally for people with no background. I mean, they don't have to have any background in cybersecurity. I come one, come all, let's have this conversation. And the course is sort of designed about trying to put educational leaders and the perspective of educational leaders at the heart of the conversation with people like you, with real cybersecurity professionals, because y'all are very generous. You want the word out. You want to share this with everybody. You want to help society to improve, to encounter all of this. And I have the audience. And so I just position educational leaders and their needs and their perspectives and their questions right in the heart of a conversation with actual cybersecurity professionals. You guys are generous. It's sort of like, oh, I see what you guys are doing over here. I see what you guys are doing over here. Let's get together. And so that's the spirit of the class. It's the spirit of how I run the class. And sort of I just position students at this vast intersection of cybersecurity and all that means in many dimensions and education, and sort of ask them to make meaning from that through, technical and non-technical sorts of ways to see what they create and what they come up with. And in the end, I'm asking them to, figure out what, from where they're situated, from their unique standpoint, what they uniquely have to offer this world, how can they contribute to making things better. And students come up with, everything from cyber safety curricula that they could deliver in school, to monthly newsletters to remind people of different facets of this conversation, to remind families about different facets of the conversation, to entire dissertation topics that they're now following up and doing research on for their doctoral dissertations. So it's been pretty neat to see what we just by positioning students seriously for these 12 weeks together. We're going to seriously look at this intersection and see how you make meaning and how you can contribute moving forward. They come up with some pretty cool things.
That's amazing. And I know that you have students from various places around the world, and it will be very interesting in my eyes to see how in different areas of the world they incorporate cybersecurity into school curriculums. As you mentioned, it could be part of the actual curriculum or extra. It will be absolutely fascinating. I can't wait to see where they take it. I really love this idea. And I want to ask you, referencing to what we discussed before about the pushback and the resistance, did you have some sort of challenges or pushback about recruiting students to this program? I mean, do you feel that it changes over time, that people realize the influence of technology, the importance of technologies on everyone's lives, to be honest, as well their lives and their students, of course?
Enrollment is up more and more. When I started the class, I think we had 6 students who signed up for it. There were always some curious few who would be willing to do that, and then it has built momentum. And so I don't concern myself whenever the course runs. It always makes enough students enroll for the course to run. But then it's taken on its own momentum with dissertation students who are seeing that there's the way they're approaching these problems. There's no research hasn't been done from their perspective as non-technical educational leaders. And how can an assistant principal meaningfully contribute to the knowledge and what we know about problems in cybersecurity with schools? Well, the answer is there's a lot they can do, and that nobody really has taken that seriously. And so they're finding ways to do that, and that just is building more momentum within our programs. And the other reality is, I don't have to do much to recruit it. The truth is, schools, neighboring schools, or sometimes the schools that my students go to, are getting attacked. I mean, it's happening all over the world, and we hear about it. And So I don't need to do much advertising. The hackers are doing it for me.
And we do thank them for our job security ministry. Yeah, but that's true. But I think that something that I've encountered with people from, let's call it, outside the tech world, once someone has experienced a cyber attack, and it doesn't matter if we're talking about someone who's an educator and experienced it in his school, or experienced it as something that one of his students went through, or as an individual, someone who even had his Instagram or Facebook or whatever account attacked. Once you experience it firsthand, you suddenly realize that all the things in the news are actually happening, and it can happen to you. But something that I've encountered, that a lot of people say, well, no one is interested in me. I mean, what data can they steal from me? I'm not interesting. And I do find that still to be the conversation to be very challenging. I mean, I've been talking about multi-factor authentication, two-factor authentication until I was blue in the face, and still people get hacked. People have their Instagram accounts hacked because they don't have two-factor authentication. Now, It's something that it's there, it's available. It's not something that is hard to implement, but if you don't think it's relevant for you, I think that's, in my experience, is still a challenge.
I think that's absolutely a challenge, and I fight that within myself sometimes. I still, and I recognize it, and so I think it's an ongoing challenge, and the stories are out there of people's lives who've been seriously disrupted, and the damage that's been done to people who thought they had nothing to lose, or that they were not interesting enough to be exposed in any kind of a way. And yet, in order for it to hit home, it needs to hit home sometimes. And that's, it's a tough one, because we don't want this harm to happen to people that we care about and that we know. But it feels like, the threat of the car hitting us when we're walking down the road, like, we can perceive that. That's a part of our reality that we're adapted to. We understand those kinds of threats, but cyber threats are more elusive. They're subtle in a way that we don't, we might be compromised and not know it yet, or not really realize the harm that's being done. And yet, in our everyday experience of the internet, things still seem fine, right? The problem is if I can't get to Instagram or whatever the thing is, like that, it's like, it's almost until it's way too late that we even realize that there's a problem. Whereas in the physical world, when you're hit by that car, you know it right away, and you can see it coming. And you can, and the thing is, we can see it coming online too, if we develop, habits that are attuned to the kinds of dangers that we know are out there.
Absolutely. I think that no one would hide the fact that they were in a car accident. People are not ashamed to say, I was involved in a car accident. I think people are still ashamed to say, I've been scammed out of $10,000. And the fact that people don't share that, I mean, we all know people that have been in car accidents. Even if we haven't experienced it ourselves, we know someone who has, but not everyone. Well, I think that everyone knows someone who had been impacted by an online threat, but they're not even aware of that. They don't know, because that conversation is not like a day-to-day. Oh, by the way, I mean, I can see someone talking about, I was in a car accident yesterday. The majority of people won't say, oh, I was scammed yesterday. There is still some sort of shame. Yeah. I mean, how could I have been this stupid? And sometimes it is what it is, because we know that hackers are using our psychology against us. They're using fear and greed and curiosity and urgency to make us not think and not look for those red signs, but click quickly now, because it's very, very urgent. And if you don't do it, the world will melt down. So I think for educators as well, sometimes they might hear about it from their students, but if there is no openness in class, they might not be aware of these things.
And that's one of the things that we can do in education, is actually just to be more aware and open and transparent about talking about the things that are already happening. So an example, I was embarrassed. I was really embarrassed, and I tell this story to my students now. I was so naive. So here I am, a PhD, knowledgeable person in this world. I love to work in the coffee shops. That's where I did I wrote my whole dissertation in the coffee shop. Like I would work there all the time. I got my email, got my chats with my friends, all of the things. I had no idea that like someone could eavesdrop on my conversations, and pretty easily, if I wasn't using a VPN or anything. And the chats with my friends about emotional things and whatever would happen. I mean, I did it all in this coffee shop, but it was almost the same thing as just chatting out loud. And there was a creeper. And I can't prove it. So here I am, a PhD. I'm a smart person. I think I'm with it. And I'm in this cybersecurity realm with these students, learning about cybersecurity. And I put it together. This creepy guy who's always staring at me, looking up from his computer, looking back to my face, especially when I'm chatting online with or writing some kind of detailed email about my feelings and my stuff. He's looking back and forth, and he's reading everything that's going on. I mean, I could just see it in the social interaction. I still can't prove it, but I'm like, I had the, and then they're like, oh my gosh, I've always had a creepy feeling about this guy. And now they're telling me that this is totally possible. And if you just use a VPN, that's going to knock this out.
But if you don't know, and the majority of things in cybersecurity are like that, if you just use a VPN, if you just add two-factor authentication,
and if I just knew that. But exactly. I was so embarrassed. But here's the thing. I had the courage to speak it up in front of the professionals, the cybersecurity professionals, and the students. And it was courageous. And I think we need to have this conversation, because I think the students are thinking on the one level, they want to scoff and say, oh, just use a VPN. But I was not a dumb person. I just didn't know that this was even possible, and that it was really the equivalent of someone eavesdropping on my conversation. I mean, I think it's illegal, right? It was illegal for them to be doing this, but it's very easy for them to just, and they're, it's also very hard to catch them. I did have some of my the cybersecurity professionals come to the coffee shop with me, and we're trying to find the guy and see what he's doing. We didn't actually catch anybody, but I told I told the owner of the coffee shop that I think this is going on, and we could put little signs up around here about are you aware of these things? And it was a humbling moment where I felt exposed and embarrassed, and I use it to help other people have this conversation, because we're just real and we don't know. And a simple thing like a VPN is going to stop people from eavesdropping on whatever you're doing. So
that's so, I love that insight, because that's exactly the point. When we talk about it, when we share it, especially educators, that they are the first line of defense. To be honest, in many cases, a teacher would know what's going on with her students sometimes before the parents would.
Yeah,
because a teacher will see the interaction in class. They'll be exposed to things that parents not necessarily. Because if the kids don't share or the parents aren't involved, they won't know. And I think that is so important to raise awareness for the teachers themselves, to be aware of the risks. Because if they're aware and they're looking for those warning signs in their students' behavior, it could make such an incredible difference. And I'm so happy that there are programs like yours that do have those conversations and do take them to other schools around the world.
But what you're speaking to is being attuned to what's actually happening in the present moment and responding to that in a way that has educational value. And I'm writing about this right now, and we're doing a book chapter the book chapter is for a philosophical audience, to try to show them, hey, this philosophy of habit is what Dewey's going to call this kind of attunement, and then reflection on our real experiences in order to develop better attunement and more habits that are better aligned to the reality of the world we're living in, right? We have philosophical constructs to describe this kind of learning, and so I'm writing it for that audience. And then the next step after this is to introduce these philosophical concepts to a cybersecurity audience, and to see if y'all think there's any value in this.
Oh, I'm sure we will. I'm sure we will. And I'm sure we will, because I think that a lot of people in cybersecurity, and you mentioned the fact, you talked about research, And yes, a lot of people that come from the hands-on, boots on the ground cybersecurity experience, not necessarily ever had that formal education or went down the academic route. So I think it will be very interesting to see people looking at those philosophical questions in cybersecurity and research them. So I think there'll definitely be an audience. Now, I want to reference here the fact that to build this program, I know that you've been working with subject matter experts from the cybersecurity world. And I want to ask you a little bit about your experience working with them, with the techie people. How did it influence and enrich the course material, the program materials?
So, it started with inviting experts to come to class and actually just talk to us. And so if they were legal experts in cybersecurity, which there are a few of them, there's more now, but there are legal experts. We would bring the cybersecurity lawyer in and have them think with educators about where cybersecurity law, well, mostly where it's lacking and where it actually does hold up. In terms of educators. And we would just have these conversations. Like I said, positioning educational leaders and their perspectives and their needs right in the heart of the conversation with actual professionals. So we've had, I think you've had Ryan Cloutier on your show. Ryan has been, he's been with me from the very beginning of starting this course, and he's a favorite in the class. He's very generous with his time. And
we love you, Ryan.
Yay! But he does. He always does the security mindset talk with the students, and that he can relate it in he's unique, and then he can explain this to general audiences in a way that can show how all this critical thinking stuff, this education stuff that we really care about, and we want to support the development of in our students, that has everything to do with a security mindset. And this is stuff that you're already doing, and you're already valuing that. And there's just a little twist to think about what that means in terms of security. It's exciting. So I think I forgot the question.
We talked about how cybersecurity experts influence the program. So you mentioned Ryan. I know you worked with others as well.
Yeah, so Ryan Cloutier and Laura Lee. Laura Lee had her career in the United States. She I don't actually know what agencies she was involved with. She's retired now. She was involved. I know she was involved with Cyber Command in the U.S. And the training, the education of the cyber soldiers. Is that what they're called? Anyway, these were the two that I met on LinkedIn at the right time when I was developing this class, and I was terrified. Oh, I was so scared just stepping out into this world. Like I was going to totally expose all my ignorance, because I hold a lot of it, but there's so much value in that ignorance. There's so much value in naming that, because that's the ignorance that society in general is holding, and we need to ask these questions. So Ryan Cloutier and Laura Lee were my two main coaches that got me started with this. And I've had a lot of people have stepped up. Privacy experts have come, and I've talked to them. Social engineering, people who've thought about human susceptibility and social engineering, and have Henry Collier is who I've worked with there. He's at Norwich University. So your people are generous. I'm so grateful for you. They give of their time to come and speak with my students. I've now recorded a bunch of lectures that may be like podcasts, right? That are part of the curriculum. We have readings and there's assignments and things that they need to do, but part of it is really just experiencing these conversations so that educational leaders can see themselves in conversation with y'all, because that's what they need to be doing, right? It's not a foreign thing. It's not embarrassing. Whatever happened, let's learn from it, and let's learn from it together so that we can grow and we can pay attention to the things that we're not paying attention to, and we know how to respond better moving forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you for calling out those incredible people. And yes, I know that a lot of people in cybersecurity, although we are all super busy, we are generous with our time, especially when it comes to education. To kids. Because I think that in my eyes, cybersecurity awareness should be part of the curriculum, just like road safety. It's exactly the same. I mean, I don't know how my car actually operates. I don't need to know what happens behind the scene inside the engine to drive the car. I need to know how to put it in gear, how to switch gears if it's a manual car. I actually learned shift. How to brake the car. I need to know the different signs and the rules of the roads. And it's exactly the same in the internet. I mean, maybe you don't have a great big red stop sign, but there are indicators that show us, for example, there is no big stop sign that tells me when it rains to turn off the wipers. But someone told me that. So I know that. So I know that if it's raining and I'm driving and I start the wipers, I will see better because someone told me. If no one would have told me, I wouldn't have known what this knob does.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so I think it's exactly the same. And I know that a lot of people in the industry share that sort of vision that kids will know how to protect themselves, that parents will know how to protect their kids. And it will be, my dream is to be completely and utterly useless and no one will need me. That's like the dream. I want no one to need me professionally. I mean, I hope people will still need me to make them, I don't know, food, maybe the kids. But yeah, that's sort of the goal.
I like this analogy with driving the car because a lot of research and work has gone into human factors to figure out where should we put the knob to do the thing. Like and so there's been a lot of engineering around typical ignorant people to make it work the best for them. And the knob to turn the window wipers on, at least in every car I'm driving, it's always in a similar place. Like I kind of know where to look and I know how to expect it. And that's been well engineered for my ease so that I can use it. But I talk to a lot of cybersecurity professionals when they're just really honest with me. They want to engineer around the end user.
Yes.
And they think that that's possible. And I'm like, please meet me as far as you can. Make it as simple and as usable and safe for me so that as much as we can, if like nobody can hold all the passwords in our head. So let's find good solutions. Let's find real solutions that will work for real people. And if you can engineer good ways to do that, I'm all for it. But I can't imagine a point, and I think your car driving example is a really good one. There's some point in which education is going to have to fill the gap. We don't come naturally wired for any of this.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
We need to the people side of this is also going to have to step up and meet it. So I don't want to deter anybody in the cybersecurity industry from doing everything they can to engineer around us, to meet us where we are to the extent that you can. And I think there will always be an educational gap there that needs to be filled in order to make the most of these technologies and to use them wisely and safely. So.
Yeah, and I think I love the fact that you just mentioned that, because I think it also correlates to one of your reading assignments in the program. I know that you sent all your students the NIST publication of why cybersecurity is everyone's job.
Yeah.
And I think you just tapped into the fact that educators also have a role. I mean, security awareness, promoting cybersecurity awareness is one of the roles. It's something that we have to make everyone involved. And NIST pointed it out that I can have the best technology in place, but if I haven't spent time on educating my users, someone will make a mistake, not because they're stupid, because no one ever explained to them. No one ever talked to them.
And educators are overburdened and there's so much curriculum and there's so many reasons why it doesn't happen. Well, it isn't part of the formalized curriculum, but it could be if we were aware, if we were more with it. It could be like simple little comments. And did you think about this? It could be more in line with that. But instead, I don't know what it's like where you are, but I know it's not uncommon in the United States for kids to come home with their Chromebooks and their password is taped right. Their password is assigned to them and it's simple and it's taped right on the computer. And this is their first, here's the car keys, kids. And here's the car keys for everyone else too. There it is. Like we wouldn't do that.
Exactly.
We wouldn't hand everybody the keys to the car. Like we have keys to the car, in fact, right? The first lesson in here's your Chromebook should be about how to protect it, right? And it's not. we haven't caught up to that. I mean, that's just one example of this, but we are like, and the speed of adoption of all these technological tools everywhere in society, but in education in particular, has just taken off. I mean, astronomically. But the reflection about this, there's a dark side to using all of this. And we've just adopted, and haven't yet caught up to the reality we're already living in and what that means. Our habits are not in tune with that. And we need to do everything we can to get ahead of it. Schools should be a vital part of that.
I agree. Can you share actually stories that you may have heard from your students about their experience in integrating those cybersecurity concepts into the school curriculums?
They range. There's a range of kind of products, but some of the more insightful ones are. I wish I had really good. I want to have some of my students. I wish I had Holly Hanna here with me, because she can talk about what, like, conversations that she would facilitate with middle school students. They're just doing regular research in their things, and then she could just, like, boom, because she sees all of this. She sees all of these different layers, and she sees how it connects to the life of middle school students or whoever is right there. And she's just very authentic and understands how to facilitate these connections really well. So we've got everything from that to, like, seriously just canned PowerPoints about, did you know that some passwords are more secure than others, and that everybody's using 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? I love you is not a unique password, is not a good password. So sometimes it's just simple things like that, and I'll take it all. I'll take it all. I like the things that are less. I mean, information is important. We need information, but I really admire the way Holly, in particular, she's one of the students, right? The way that she catches it in the moment, in the authentic lived experience all the time, and can reflect on it and draw it to students' attention, right? And when we can develop a heightened level of awareness of the problem, where we spot it authentically in this moment and can respond to it in effective ways that further the conversation and further awareness, like, that's the kind of education that I get really excited about. And I'll take the PowerPoints too. Let's integrate those also, right?
Absolutely, but I think I absolutely agree with you, because it has to be, like, encompassing. It's not enough to have once a year Cybersecurity Week and let's have a great presentation.
I'll take
and it might be a great presentation.
I'll take those things because they do move the needle forward, but we have to have a bigger vision than that, because it's like, it needs to be ongoing and reinforced, and we ultimately need to change our habits. We need to change the way that we are living in our habits are here, our reality is here. There's this gap that leaves us vulnerable. It leaves us vulnerable, and opens up all these fascinating ethical questions that we haven't figured out yet. And living right now in 2023, the bar on, like, technological advancement is just out of control, and so the gap is getting bigger every second that we're speaking. The gap between where human habit is and the reality of where technology is, and yet we've already adopted all of this stuff and integrated it into our everyday living without catching up internally, mentally, with that reality. And so the more we can just sort of grapple with that and grow in that, and we can embody a sort of change that will be ever adaptive, because we're having conversations about passwords today. That's going to change. Like, the passwords are going away, from what I understand, right? Certainly once quantum computing is large. I mean, at some point, this is all going to change. And so it's like, we can't just talk about, let's talk about passwords when it's important, when it's relevant, but we have to think bigger, because technology is growing bigger all the time. We need to, like, really build a kind of security mindset for general populations that can adapt and really contend with the changing reality that we're living in. And it's changing fast.
It is absolutely. I think you gave a lot of good points about building that security mindset. Do you think there's, like, a specific tip, like one thing you think every educator should do in their environment to move the needle?
I'm going to shout out to a tool that Ryan helped to develop when he was with Security Studio. He developed this S2Me tool that I start the
Yes.
students with, right? And so it gives them a and what I'm saying, for educators to do this, they need to first recognize the risk and their own vulnerabilities in their own lives. We need to make it personal, right? Sometimes we pretend that the technological habits that we use in our work life are separate from those that we use in our own personal life. And I just think that's not true. That's not how humans actually work.
Absolutely.
And we sort of lie to ourselves into thinking that that's the case. And so I, start the course out with let's make it personal and really assess, let's secure you. Let's assess where you're at right now in your own life. And let's just be real about that. And then let's set some goals for improving your own security. Let's add multi-factor authentication to these key accounts that you're using. Let's just, try to, and it's painful at first. It's painful
It's annoying.
it is very annoying until it becomes okay, this is just another habit. I have to tie my shoes. I have to buckle my seatbelt. It can get there, right? But we have to be willing to, but we can't until we just get really real about what are we currently doing in our lives. And so I want teachers to first recognize their own vulnerability, the reality of their own, their students, yes, but let's take it really, really down, their own kids and the internet. And when you just hand your kids the iPad and send them to their room, what you're really exposing them to. And if you haven't had the right conversations with them, if they don't have the right supervision, if you're exposing them to danger. And we don't have that in our cultural conversation. It's not yet in our lexicon.
Absolutely.
So I think to make it really personal, so hopefully so that we can avoid problems before they happen, but really have teachers assess and to realize in their own lives where we're beginning with all of this is a good place to start.
I agree. I think that the best tip I had from an educator about maintaining cybersecurity safety with kids is you will never, if your kid would go to a party or to meet with friends, when they come back, we always ask them, how was your day? Who did you meet with? Who did you have lunch with? Where did you go? Whatever. But when we send our kids to their room with their iPads, we don't ask them, who have you been playing with? Who did you talk to? Who did you chat with? What websites did you go? And we need to change that conversation because that is the reality. It's not virtual reality. That is the reality.
Mm-hmm.
For
It is.
we relocated 2 years, a year and a half ago, and my son has play dates with one of his best friends at least once or twice a week. They both log on and they open the PlayStation and they play with each other and they have a conversation. And for him, it's as real as if they met back home and played in the PlayStation together. So I think the technology opens up a lot of opportunities.
Yeah.
I mean, it is incredible,
Yeah.
but we need to change the narrative. We need to ask those questions.
Yeah, but that's a great example. Our parenting habits are not yet attuned to that, those same questions that we do, just naturally, we're attuned to those kinds of realities of children's lives. When they, are in school, who did you talk to? What did you have for lunch? We're attuned to those realities of their lives. So we're not attuned to their digital realities.
Exactly.
And we need to wake up.
Yeah. So, before wrapping this up, I always address the elephant in the room and the DEI angle. Now, in education, it's a little bit different, but as you know, in cybersecurity, diversity is still very
Yeah.
much an issue, not just women in cyber, but diversity in general. I would love to hear your outlook on education and the educator's role in creating that diversity, not just in cyber, in tech in general. How can educators also move that needle and get more people involved, get that diversity? Because we need more people and we want to open up more opportunities for people.
I think that many educators are not aware I mean, people who went to go to school to become teachers, they're not even aware that cybersecurity or technology, they're not aware of those careers, that those are viable careers. And so the course is just really like, hey, like this is this whole other thing that's going on. And there's a huge need for a particular kind of talent. And there's an interesting dynamic here, because the talent that is really good in cybersecurity is oftentimes thwarted and punished in schools. When that creativity that like the natural creativity in the classroom that teachers are observing, like, can be cultivated and should be
Yeah.
cultivated for the good of society. And if you can do that when they're in middle school, if you can catch them there, if you can know that this is a thing out there, that there's a need, a societal need, and a good career, right, a good future for these kids in this area. So I think educators are just not aware of that, and also they can, if they can be aware of it and be aware of the particular, or just attuned or sort of aware of the particular kind of student and the kind of curiosity. And I think curiosity is really pretty key.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's a pretty core thing, but it's sort of like curiosity can manifest in all kinds of ways that are that can be very disruptive and counterproductive in schools, but it's also awesome. Like, it's what we really, I mean, it's awesome. And if we could be better at spotting it and see it as awesome and know how to harness that to do really cool, interesting things, to also allow space and grace for, like, when mistake, I mean, I've talked to a lot of people like you, May, and all of you started out crossing some boundaries as kids, right? And it's like, it's usually the best, but like everyone has this story. All of you do, where there's some kind of boundaries, and you're just sort of playing and being curious and getting into gray territory. I mean, if educators can be aware of this need, aware of the kind of curiosity and the kind of talent, aware of cultivating it, and also be aware of how to hold the conversation when and if boundaries get crossed, how to hold that moment, and respond helpfully. I'm not saying that if students are doing things that need to be, punished or something, there's room for that, but there's also room to grow, in that. And we tend to, I think it's a common story. I know of it. That we also use a case study in the beginning of the class, of students who actually hacked their school for like 2 or 3 years. They were like
I can tell you that,
in all the
first place that every script kiddie tries is the school. It's the first place. The second, by the way, is mommy and daddy's workplace.
I did not know that.
Yeah, because we have a tendency to think that we won't get into too much trouble with that.
Oh, you can get in a lot of trouble with that.
I didn't. Never mind. You did say prayers. Yeah. We all did that. Yeah. Well, we had to learn somehow.
I think that, so I start the class up with a case study where this happened, where some kids got into their school and got in deep, like had the security cameras, the door locks, the thermostat, like all the stuff in the school for years, right? They've got access to all of this stuff for years. And like all the other kids in the school sort of knew about this, but the adults were sort of oblivious. At any rate, when it did come out, the knee-jerk reaction was to expel these kids. And I think punishment was warranted, but there was an opportunity for the school to grow and to learn from this, an opportunity for the students to take a humble lesson about where they absolutely overstepped and how they, and how to cultivate. But it's just like this, I think they were just caught off guard and didn't know. So I put this case study right in front of the students right at the start, so that they're not so unprepared when this happens, and they can think of more helpful responses that can that can grow the students, grow the school, grow the situation, hopefully grow the kind of talent that we need. So I think
make the kids secure at the school.
Well,
make the kids secure at the school, and then we'll have actual experience, and they will write a paper about it, about how they secured the school, and that could actually be something that they will use in the future to get a job in cybersecurity.
But instead, it's it's blacklist, don't talk about it, cloaked in
Exactly.
shame, and expelled.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we need educators just to be aware that this is that these problems happen, and that it's a key opportunity, and how we respond to that will shape the future for those students' lives, for our schools, and I think really for society.
Absolutely.
So I
Yeah,
didn't directly answer the
amazing.
DEI thing, but it's sort of like there's so much talent
It
that
is.
we are not cultivating at the right time, and educators are at the key position for spotting that and cultivating it. The other piece about DEI that I don't know if I'm probably not saying anything new to you, is that the problems in cybersecurity are just so complex. We need so many different perspectives, and this
Oh yeah.
has been great. Like, as a non-technical person who's been around conversations, who's thought about cybersecurity, I mean, I bring a totally different perspective, a different toolkit to look at and
Absolutely.
analyze the problems. And that's been really welcomed, because there is a recognition in the field of cybersecurity of just how diverse the problems are. It's so multifaceted, and that we need lots of perspectives, and there's room for all of that. And I think that I think there's an awareness of that in cybersecurity, and I think that that's growing. So I'm optimistic.
Yeah.
And it's not just more inclusion for the sake of inclusion, although that's good. I would support that, but it's also to make cybersecurity better, and it will, and
Exactly.
make society better,
Exactly.
and it will.
Exactly. Amazing. Thank you so much for this. And before we round up, I always like to finish today's conversation with very short pop quiz questions, whatever comes to mind. No right or wrong answers. So let's get going. And let's start with, what's your go-to firewall to beat imposter syndrome and self-doubt? Because we're all encompassed in self-doubt all the time.
Yeah. My go-to firewall for that is to know it, to name it, to feel the fear, step forward anyway, and pretend as if, and just move forward anyway, to pretend as if. And what I've learned from years of doing this in many situations is that you do that enough, and then eventually you look back and you're like, oh, I am a real PhD, or I am a real professor, or I am a real person talking about this stuff, right? I feel afraid. I'll name that for myself. I know I'm afraid, and I'm just going to step forward anyway. And you keep doing that, and then all of a sudden the line's back there, and you've already been the thing, whatever the thing was, a mother,
And now
whatever.
there's a new thing to fear.
What is that? There's always a new thing to fear.
Yeah, exactly. So
But do
moving
you
on.
feel like, as you get better at this, you get practice, if you encountered enough, the imposter thing doesn't ever go away, but it's sort of like, as you move forward, I have enough experience overcoming that, or like at some point I look
Yeah,
back
well,
and I realize I've already,
you
I
know,
have a PhD. What happened there? You know?
exactly. Well, last week I was working on a project and I finished the project on Friday, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's why they're paying me, because I could do this.
Oh,
And it was like a aha moment that what I just accomplished in this project is not something trivial. Not everyone can
yeah.
do this, but it was sort of a aha moment. Yeah, I've just accomplished something big that not a lot of people could do. So yeah, there's always a new thing to be afraid of. And speaking of which, what's the most daring thing you've done recently that really pushed you outside your comfort zone?
You're calling me out on my lack of courage, because I haven't been pushing myself out enough lately into my
Mm.
comfort zone. But I will tell you, starting this class, this was, 2019, I began the class in terror, and I named it. Like, I remember the first synchronous session, I was just like, I'm just going to name the fear. I feel I've got these cybersecurity experts who I didn't really know. I hadn't yet built relationship, and I was like, and the students are there. I'm like, here, we're going to start this thing, and it was absolute terror. And one of those cybersecurity professionals, it was Laura Lee later, right? She sent me some Simon Sinek videos, right? About, like, how when she feels afraid and how she moves forward anyway, and that here she is, training the US Cyber Command people, and yet before she does a big training, it's sort of like she's got to remind herself about, like, oh, like, this is normal. We all feel this. So it was just great to have other people ahead of me, and it's great that it was a woman, right? Like, relate and say, look, this is normal and we all feel it. And here's some resources that I use, and we can keep moving forward with it. That was a big, big moment of fear. And
Amazing.
you're reminding me that I haven't stepped out enough lately. So thank you for that reminder. I need to do something daring.
So I will follow up on that.
Oh,
See,
good.
I'm also I'm a very annoying person. What's the best piece of advice you received throughout your career?
Twofold. One is, and they're actually saying opposite things, but you've got to hold the tension together. One is, don't try to shoot your target at someone else's arrow. Or don't try to shoot your arrow at someone else's target, because that target is always moving, and the only one that you can reliably hit is your own.
Nice.
Don't try to do that. So that was from my dissertation advisor. That's what she said. And then another piece of advice that's sort of contrary to that, it's like, what I was saying earlier, like, oh, here's how you want a research agenda, you want a career in this, you see what these people are doing over here. Oh, and I see what, like, cybersecurity people, I see what you're doing over there. Educators, oh, I see what you're doing over there. Let's talk to each other, right? And so it was like a simple way. If you want to be an important person, you find these two things and you do this. And I was like, okay, that seems too simplistic. But if you can do that, and find a way that is integrating your own arrow and the thing that you uniquely can contribute, right? Where you are shooting at your own arrow, through the things that you really care about. Like, I'm finding there's ways to do both, actually. Beautiful. So I try to hold those two things together.
I like that. That's nice. Was there a specific resource or book? You already referred to Simon Sinek, but maybe something else that profoundly impacted your life or your career?
Yes,
or
but
maybe Simon Sinek is also fine.
Simon Sinek is great, but I'm just going to nerd out on you. John Dewey's Artist Experience. I know it's a what is this, 350 page book of philosophy. It's awesome, and there's so much insight for cybersecurity in here.
So I'll have to reread it.
I don't know, but the value of experience and learning through experience, right? So that's one thing that this book is talking about, and that speaks to the present moment of the gap between technology is here, our habit is here, where we need to mend this gap, right, in order to grow. When we're not even aware that it exists, right? Like, when we're hungry, there's a gap between our reality that we're in and like where we're at, and we do stuff to mend that gap. But it's sort of like we're all hungry, except we don't know it.
Yeah.
So that's some insights from Dewey. It's an insight. So that's what you get from Artist Experience. It's a good book.
Beautiful.
It was really important to me.
Amazing.
With me.
And last but not least, how do you celebrate your achievements?
I mean, the sad answer, the wine is involved sometimes, but it's actually, I mean, and that's good, and that's fun, and that's nice. But the better moment, and I think that this is, I think for me, and I think we probably all struggle with this, is that like, when you submit that big project and then you have that moment where you sit and you exhale, like, giving space and attention to that moment and allowing for it. I don't think we give ourselves the space to exhale. Like, I feel it, when a student completes their dissertation, right? And it's like, we just got them there to this stuff. It's like, but I think just tending to that moment, so I like the wine, but I think we need to hold on to that exhale, that moment of exhale, more, and really take that in and feel it. And I am a busy person like the rest of us, and I think we tend to skip over the exhale.
Yeah, and run to the next project.
Yeah, and so I love your question. So I want to honor and hold on to the exhale more, and then have some good wine.
Exactly. Oh, we can exhale with good wine. Yeah, so definitely good wine will be involved. Amazing. Jane, thank you so much for joining me today. It was insightful and fascinating, and I really appreciate your time and contribution to this profession.
Well, gosh, thank you. Thank you for all you do. And yeah, pleasure.
Amazing. And I will see you all in another episode of CyberMAYnia.